Another beautiful day in the universe. That's right. It's time again for the SMC Journal podcast, the show that's all about software engineering, DevOps, security, AI, performance testing, tuning. If you're dealing with it in the enterprise, we're probably talking about it on this show, my favorite show, and possibly yours too. I'm Scott Moore, your host. Thank you for joining me today. OpenTelemetry. It's probably the poster child for the cloud native computing foundation if there ever was one. What is OpenTelemetry? Regular viewers of this show probably already know, but let me explain. It is a collection of tools, APIs, and software development kits that are there to allow you to instrument, to generate, and collect types of telemetry data, namely metrics, logs, and traces used for observability of your applications and systems. As we move away from just APM, application performance monitoring, and just monitoring into observability, which is how are our systems actually doing right now and how do we know? OpenTelemetry has played sort of a vital role, and it's not complete standard yet. I mean, it's still evolving, and that's one of the things we're going to talk about today. But before we do, let's talk about the wonderful sponsor that makes this show happen so you can view it, and that is Micro Focus, the makers of LoadRunner Professional, Enterprise, Cloud, and Developer. They have one of the largest community of performance engineers in the world, and if you scan that QR code, it'll take you to the LoadRunner family page where you can learn more about LoadRunner itself, how you can download a community version with 50 virtual users for most of the protocols, a fully functional version of LoadRunner so you can find out all the things that it can do. I've been using LoadRunner for almost 30 years now, and it has the widest protocol selection of any load testing tool and a very hardcore analysis engine as well. No bolting on 3 or 4 other tools like you have to do in some products to get to analysis of test results. So thank you, Micro Focus, for sponsoring this show. We really appreciate it. And one of the things that I had talked about to Micro Focus recently about LoadRunner is that they want to tie into things like OpenTelemetry libraries, and I believe that's probably on the way. They're probably working on it as we speak. I don't know that to be a fact, but everybody wants to integrate with OpenTelemetry. In fact, when I was at KubeCon last year, it was very evident that you had Kubernetes and OpenTelemetry kind of side by side. Everybody's kind of dogpiling on these two, trying to find their place in how do we provide a solution that's on top of what you get natively, and how can we actually support it? And all of the vendors that are observability platform vendors, such as Dynatrace, Datadog, Splunk, they're all trying to make sure that they support the latest standards of OpenTelemetry even before the standard is even complete. So we're actually seeing in the market right now where companies are competing for being the latest to support the latest standard. And there's more coming. And that's what we really want to talk about today. Josh Lee from Instana has been on the show a few times, and I wanted to bring you this show in March. We had this interview last month, but things pile up. But actually, Josh presented at CMG Impact this year, and his presentation was, "Hey, nice profile, the future of profiling in OpenTelemetry." And I thought it was an interesting topic that he was talking about, and I said, let's go ahead and bring him on the show to talk about this and why he thinks that adding profiling as a new data point in OpenTelemetry, or a signal as we might call it, could be a game changer and give people a lot more power when it comes to observability. So let's talk to Josh. Hey, Josh Lee, welcome back to the SMC Journal podcast.
Hey, Scott Moore, thanks for having me back. Happy to be here.
Yeah, I haven't seen you since KubeCon. I hope you're rested up from that and you're ready for the new year to kick everything off. Of course, now we're into March, so.
Yep.
Where did January and February even go? I don't even know. Josh with Instana, and you kind of hit me up about something that's going on with OpenTelemetry. I wanted to find out more about it. So why don't you just tell us what's going on?
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to talk about something that's really interesting to me, and that's the OpenTelemetry profiling specification, which is sort of being brewed up right now as we're talking about this. So this is the vision for what we're talking about here is a new signal type in OpenTelemetry, right? So for those of you who aren't familiar, or just a refresher, OpenTelemetry right now has 3 signal types. It has metrics, traces, and logs. And those correlate to the backend tools and so on that you can use to ingest those signal types. So this is a proposal to add a new signal type for profiling. And the idea is to get down into the nitty-gritty, like runtime performance of your code in an open format that is universal across all of the languages, right? So OpenTelemetry has been this amazing transformation, really, in how we aggregate our telemetry data, because instead of getting different formats depending on the different technologies, we're now getting it all in one unified format that is easier to work with and process and combine. And so that's kind of, I think that for me, that's the exciting part about this proposal, is that we could then unify all of these, I don't know if any of you are familiar with Profilerpedia, but there's a whole Wikipedia of like Profiler. This audience is probably more familiar with this than I am, right? But it's a little bit of a mess, the ecosystem. So if we can kind of rein that in and say, this is the one way that you need to get your data into across all of these different technologies, I think that's going to enable a flourishing ecosystem of performance tools.
I'm looking at this page, and on the section that says performance considerations, and one thing that just pops into my mind as I'm looking at this is, when you're profiling stuff, you're generally adding overhead because you're collecting so much data and so much information. So how do we make sure that we avoid that in this case?
So Google's really the pioneers here. They pioneered continuous profiling, where we're running it continuously in production, and we don't have so much overhead that we can only run it in our development environments like you and I might be used to in our IDEs. So the components that Google identified that are necessary for continuous profiling is a sampling frequency. So you can't actually be measuring the CPU on every clock cycle, right? You have to sample every second, no, I believe the number they use is 100 hertz, right? So 100 times per second. And then you need to aggregate the data locally. It's also just too much data to send over the wire. So there was one, Thomas Billion, who works at Elastic now, that he used to work at Optimize. He shared a comment on the GitHub proposal when it was being worked on, and he did this math. And basically he came to the conclusion that if you have a 64 core server, which is not too uncommon, you're going to be generating 32 megabytes per second of profiling data if you didn't sample or aggregate. So that's a quarter of a gigabit Ethernet connection, right? So It's like, that is a little too much overhead for just your profiling data. So it's sampling at the instrumentation and then aggregating on that host and sending the aggregated data, maybe once every 10 seconds. But this creates this is what the exciting conversation is that's happening right now in the OpenTelemetry groups is, how do we account for this? How do we deal with, okay, right now every OpenTelemetry protocol is stateless, but maybe there's an argument to be made here that this should be a stateful protocol.
Yeah, I'm looking at this and I'm seeing the big benefit is to be able to see which code, what part of the code, which line of code is most responsible for taking up the resources of the infrastructure, which is so critical when you're in the cloud now, because we're hearing more and more about, we got to cut costs. It's got to be more efficient. We've got to refactor. We've got to make best use of the resources. And I think that's where observability platforms are really now starting to focus is, those cloud bills are twice as much as we thought they were, but it's maybe because we've got some real dogs out there that are just taking up way too much stuff. This is a great way to do that. So why do you think this is really like a game changer for OpenTelemetry? Like adding this, is this like a scale of 1 to 10 feature wise? Is this like a 10 or is this like a meh?
I don't know. For me, it's like probably like a 6 or a 7 at least, right? I think this is more than this is a game changer for OpenTelemetry. I think this can be a game changer for profiling in terms of making the ecosystem healthier and more interoperable with all the various tools. But then also, for OpenTelemetry, for observability, having this additional capability, I'm going to upgrade my answer. I think this is necessary. I think this is a 10. This needs to be part of OpenTelemetry because otherwise you're gonna have what we have now, right? So this is okay. is kind of a good segue to the other thing I wanted to talk about with this, which is a question that when I first saw this, right, at I forget which conference, what popped into my head is, well, why can't we just use spans? Mm-hmm. Now you and I are talking about resource utilization, but if you're just talking about timing, if you just want to know the timing information for each function, you could use really, really granular trace spans. But that's like, we can talk about the technical reasons why that doesn't actually work, right? The technical requirements, like we were just talking about sampling and aggregation for profiles, it's a very different technical concern than what you have with traces and spans, where you want to keep all of that cardinality so that you can use it for your investigation journeys. So yeah, I think having that ability to drill down, right, take a trace span and then drill down into what's happening underneath that without having to like clobber the trace span space is going to be really important.
And is this something that you personally are getting involved with on this repo, and or is this something Instana's getting behind, or what?
Right now I'm watching. I'm very eagerly watching. I think this is an area where, right now, as in the current state of the world, I think this is an area where you really need a vendor solution, right? There isn't really an open solution to profiling the way that there is to, say, distributed tracing or metrics that is universal. I'm also curious, like, what are going to be the drawbacks, right? Of is this going to have an agent that runs on the host, right? That to me is really important, that you're getting those host level metrics. Because for me, I was debugging an issue in an application a couple of weeks ago, and it was a memory spike when the application was starting up, before the OTel libraries have even been loaded. So you're not going to get any telemetry data out of an OTel SDK at that point. You need some kind of monitoring agent running on the host, and I want to see if that's going to be a part of this specification.
The other thing about agents, though, is they are seen by InfoSec as very intrusive, and I mean, it's a no-win situation because everybody has a monitor, right? If you want Prometheus stuff, you got to put in. There's an agent. It's like we've all got to build these little tiny web servers to tell us the information that we need on the machine, but it's sort of like a necessary evil. So there's also that side of it as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, I would say that's another reason to look at a vendor managed supply chain versus an open one. But
right,
yeah, that is certainly a concern.
So is this something that you plan on talking more about?
Yes, definitely. I think we need to make as much noise around this as possible. So I gave a talk in February at CMG Impact, where I was talking about this in a little more depth. And yeah, I think that this is something that we need to make happen. So you should expect to see me talking about this more.
You're at Instana, and I wanted to find out, while I had you on the show, what's new with Instana? What's going on there?
Oh, well, we have a lot of stuff, as always. One of the most exciting things for me right now is a partnership we have with AWS on their Compute Optimizer product. So AWS Compute Optimizer is sort of like a lightweight alternative to an ARM. If you don't need all of the capabilities of an ARM, you can turn this on your AWS account, and then you need to provide it with data from an observability vendor like Instana. We're one of the four partners that you can use to provide it with data. And so what that's going to do is it's going to use the real-time memory usage statistics from Instana to right-size your AWS servers.
That's amazing, because you're like the third person that I've talked to in the last couple of weeks where, well, ever since KubeCon, really, I noticed this emphasis on observability showing how to improve the efficiency to reduce cloud cost. It's all about how to reduce cloud costs, and there's all these little vendors that are popping up saying, let us show you how to get just in time compute time, reduce the amount of cost for every cycle that you use. I mean, they're really at a granular level trying to reduce the cost of the cloud, because it's become such a a big deal. I mean, the C-levels and people who have just migrated their entire companies to the cloud that made that decision are like, whoa, this is twice as expensive as we thought. Maybe we should start repatriating back to on-premise
like
servers.
37 signals, yeah.
Yeah, and so I'm seeing this. So this is great that you're doing this, you and others. So I think we're going to see more and more of that in 2023. Anything you want to add to that about cloud cost optimization and how that's a big deal and how Instana can help?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it is definitely a big deal, right? I've been hearing the same things and seeing the same things that you are. It's on the top of everybody's mind. I think another reason why this is important to us is people are starting to look at their tool chains and trim the fat, right? It's you wanna choose that one tool that can solve as many problems for you as possible. And observability tools are perfectly positioned to be that because we have the data. So I think that's something we're going to see more of moving forward is consolidation under these observability platforms.
As a software engineer and a systems engineer kind of combined, I look at this as testing and observability and monitoring is sort of telling you, is your application out there, is it so expensive because it's so complex and there's so much going on and that's what needs to meet the requirement of the business? Or is it just really bad design? And if it's telling you that it's bad design, that's a good signal for you to refactor and change possibly your whole architecture if need be to pay for that. I posted that on LinkedIn recently. If somebody has put something out there that they think is complicated, maybe it's complicated because they built it wrong, and all the testing and verification and monitoring that goes on is all it's going to do is just try to compensate for that. Whereas if they went back and redid it and made it simpler, they wouldn't have to do as much verification, they wouldn't need as much monitoring, they wouldn't need as much of this to compensate for that. Is you agree?
Yeah, I think really for me, what I think or what I hope we're going to see come from this sort of reckoning, building what you need when you need it, right? Not building in anticipation. I can think back to jobs that I've had where the CTO, I worked at a startup where we had 3 developers, and the CTO was convinced that we needed to have a microservices architecture with 17 different services. Why do you need 17 different services owned by one team with 3 people on it? Like,
you just need a WordPress site. No, I'm just
right. Pretty much.
It's just a plug-in. Yeah, but so I am seeing that. I think, people are like, I could create a static website, which would fulfill the needs, or I can put it all on Kubernetes. And it's like, come on, dude.
I mean, I wanted to get rid of the database, so I just moved my own personal website to Jekyll from WordPress, so I don't have to maintain it anymore because I'm in the same boat. Like, I just don't have time.
There's no time. Thank you so much for being on the show. Welcome back anytime, Josh.
Thanks, Scott. It's great to be here.
Okay, so profiling in OpenTelemetry, big deal or you tell me. You can always reach me through a variety of platforms on social media. I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram. Scan the QR code. It'll take you to my bio with all the links and ways that you can get in touch with me. If you're just lazy, send me an email to heyscott@smcjournal.com. If you really like this video, I would appreciate a like on it, as well as subscribing to our YouTube channel. We need subscribers. We have to tell YouTube that what we do here at the SMC Journal is really important, and there is an audience for it, and we need hundreds of thousands of millions of billions of trillions of subscribers, because that's what the cool kids have. Would really appreciate you doing that. So what more would you like to see on the show? We've got a lot of things planned. We are opening up to other topics outside of just performance testing and tuning the way I've done in the past. We started talking about security a lot as well, because we've got some new sponsors for the show, which you've been hearing about. And we're going to be talking about that in the near future as well. Some more things about like DDoS attacks and some of the things that are happening in the market. So let me know what you want to see. Until I talk to you next time on the SMC Journal podcast, this is Scott Moore saying thank you for watching, and bye-bye.